Hi, it's Grandmama Doris. The calendar which nearly all the world uses is dated according to the Christian era. It reckons the years of the present time as 2,000 and so many years after year one. But this year one on the calendar makes the milestone for all its reckoning is not the first year of creation. It is not the first year of the beginning of knowledge. It is not the first year of history. It is the year in the midst of a long stream of human life in which a new religion was born with the coming of a child whose name was Jesus, and whom afterward men were to follow and adore as Christ. That year has become a turning point with reference to which all history, before and after, is reckoned. We enumerate the years which precede it, such as the years of BC, or before Christ. And when we speak of an event in the history which has followed it, we say it happened in such a year as AD. That period on our calendar's beginning was confirmed time in the world's history. There were many outward things to make men proud and content, but there were much inward recklessness and bitterness of the soul. Rome had extended her conquest over all the lands bordering the Mediterranean Sea. Her legions had held the ancient site of Carthage. They dominated what had once been the Empire of Egypt. They had their camps as far north as Danube and as far east as Syria and beyond. The buildings, coliseums, theaters, forums, not only in Rome, but in the expanding cities of her far-flung province, testified to the wealth and magnificence of the empire. Of Augustus Caesar, the emperor, it was said that he found Rome a city made of brick, and he left it a city built of marble. But in the Roman Empire there was the beginning of the weakness of the soul. Old religions were crumbling in that breakup and mingling of civilization which the Rome conquest had brought about. New cults were rising, the so-called mystery religions, which held on to their virtues and the promise of salvation through secret rites. But multitudes of people had no real religion whatsoever, nor any sense of heavenly meaning in the things of earth. The people in Israel were disillusioned in another sort of way. They were not worldlings, as many of the Romans were. They clung with stubborn loyalty to their ancient religious hopes. But to many it seemed as though these hopes were tragically defeated. Their fathers had believed in a nation that would be great and a nation that would be free. Now the nation, after the last heroic but too brief chapter of the Maccabean struggle, had sunk into subjection under the rule of Rome. Long ago the prophets had proclaimed that Messiah would come to be God's leader and God's deliverer. The sense of frustration which all the nation felt made men all more passionately hopeful that the Messiah might come soon. In name, these hopes were religious, but often they assumed a very crude political form, which then more than once shortly became, before Jesus was born and afterward, sudden rebellious flared in the province of Galilee, where they crushed the Romans by Herod and cruel punishment. It seemed as though all the old glorious expectations were doomed and to be defeated. As a nation, Israel had lost whatever pride and rank it once had possessed. And in religion, there was danger that old faith would harden into formalism. The Pharisees and the scribes taught with stubborn insistence every jot and every little law of Moses, and of elaborations which the rabbis had woven around these. But there were others who were almost ready to become indifferent, and in the confusion of the world's councils, who knew whether religion mattered. There were plenty of teachers, but there was everyone in his own personality and his own life gave authority to what he said. It was into such a world that the new life entered, and the New Testament is a story of a life itself in its first consequences. The New Testament as it stands printed in the book of the Bible, which is shorter than the Old Testament. It has 27 books, as against 39 that are written in the New Testament. In general, much briefer than the Old. They represent, almost in their origin, a much more compact period. The earliest of them, which are some of the letters of the Apostle Paul, were written about the year 50 A.D. The latest of them probably in the early country. Of some of them, such as Paul's letters, we know their authorship and almost exactly the time and circumstances of their writing. Some of them we cannot do place so precisely. Neither can we always be sure of the relative elements of the first-hand observation and of tradition which enter into them. The four Gospels in which the New Testament opens bear the names of Matthew, one of the 12 disciples of Jesus Christ, of Mark, a young man who was at one time a companion of Paul, and also knew Simon Peter, and of Luke, a Greek physician who was with Paul on some of his ministry journeys, and John, the most beloved among the 12, who was nearest to Jesus. Christian scholarship has wrestled with the questions of these Gospels. They present questions of authorship and questions of date and material in which they embody. That story which is written by man who gathered together all knowledge that they could command concerning Jesus and concerning the fellowship which grew up in his name. Some of that knowledge was made up of immediate and personal memories. Some of it was arrived at indirectly through impressions which Jesus made upon other people. Some of it, such as the stories of the infancy, raises on great wings of devotion into those realms of expressions where poetry like the place of a prose. These men who wrote the New Testament were inspired of God. Their inspiration was not so much in the technique of their writing, but rather in the passion of experience which made them write. Thank you so much.